So I very much respect your story and your journey, and I just think it's so powerful. And the thing that makes me wonder is, okay, to your point, there's all these converging themes right now, and I think work is going to look vastly different in the next 5 years.
Yes.
So if you were to sit down with a bunch of like senior level leaders for larger kind of organizations that have been around the block for a while, who are probably more not hesitant, but maybe they need to think it through a little bit more. What would be the key themes that you would say, look, I mean, you got to be thinking about it this way, and here's the value that you would get from it? Because I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this as well too. There's just a ton of bias out there, and I think and habits around way things have always been done. And this just seems to me like a point of inflection where we can now view at things how they could be done and could be done better.
I spend a lot of time with big brands. We spend a lot of time in tech and with large companies that have a lot of resources, and then also some other companies that are a little bit more agile. And there's two really strategies to think about this from a workforce development perspective. And by the way, I love the role that HR is now playing. I mean, 2020 is the year of HR. But so there's two ways to think about this. Certainly, there's a call to brands to be very value-centric right now. Everyone's trying to go back to what are their values of inclusion, et cetera. So there's sort of this calling by both the market in terms of how people are spending money, but also staff and who staff wants to work for. So there's two ways to think about this. One is offense and defense. So from an offense perspective, you're certainly thinking about employee retention. Because, the cost of replacing an employee can be upwards of $150,000 per employee that you lose, certainly by the time you have to recruit someone new, do the training, et cetera. So retention is a really important idea. Also, offense-wise is your product in market using this values framework, and are your people believing in what you're selling? Like there can be a cognitive disconnect between what the brand is saying and bringing to market, and then how they're treating their staff. And then from a defense perspective, it's really about boxing out competitors. It's about staying in a place of competitive advantage. And so sometimes what you need tends to be skills that you don't have in-house. And so there's a great skilling question that's coming about now. And so, Adam, I said, but when I started the business, I probably couldn't have predicted where this was going to go. But now predictions look like skilling will be the great unifier and the great currency of the future. And that means all sorts of different things. So I love this idea of freeing ourselves from thinking about this like full-time W-2 model to think about how do we bring in just the exact right set of skills for the next series of decisions we need to make, as opposed to these long-term engagements or these long, tenures of employees who it may not make sense for either party to have those kinds of relationships. So we're encouraging brands to think about that in sort of like a virtual boardroom setting. How do you open up those doors to more talent?